Imagine this, it's December of 2010. Halo Reach just released a few months ago, BioShock 2 released this year, Red Dead Redemption and Fallout New Vegas just came out and are critically acclaimed. You probably played them. Meanwhile, a pretty new game called League of Legends was just starting to gain popularity. In this game, the new and exciting champion Trundle had just released, and some players feel he's overpowered. The next champion will be Cassiopeia, and she'll release very soon. It was during this time that Riot Games decided to host a very important on-stream event. 5 summoners representing the region of Ionia and 5 for Noxus would do battle on Summoner's Rift. In this match, Ionia would fight for their freedom after the invasion of Noxus, and if they won, Ionia would be free. The winners would get 2,800 Riot points and 6,300 influence points, but what really mattered was that the match would decide League's lore. Unbeknownst to the summoners though, this match started a butterfly effect that would change not just the lore, but League of Legends itself forever. Not only League though, it may even impact a $250 million animated series 15 years later, and possibly the outcome of world tournaments. It also caused the near immediate removal of an item from the game, thanks to one legendary player that most people watching this have never heard of. This is the story of the Ionia vs Noxus show match, which might be the most important match in League's history, or most important match ever played. Before we get to the match itself, we need to talk about League's old lore. Well, back in 2010, League didn't have much of it.
I hope you're hungry. For nothing.
Lore was mostly told through the Journal of Justice, basically a tabloid-style newspaper that told stories about what was going on with League's champions. And it was honestly really weird. But that's for another video. Riot needed a way to make this lore more interesting and to get people invested in League's stories. In League's lore, the region of Ionia had been invaded by Noxus. Seeking to avoid bloodshed, Ionia joined the League of Legends, and the decision was made that the matter would be settled on Summoner's Rift. In the story, Ionia lost this match, and Noxus was granted the right to occupy Noxus for 15 years. 7 years later, because a certain monk set himself on fire in protest, the right to an early rematch was granted to Ionia. If Ionia won, they would have freedom once more. If they lost, they would have to surrender completely to Noxus. Riot saw an opportunity here to do something new and to get the community actually involved in League's lore. So they announced what would be one of the most important events they would ever do, the Ionia vs Noxus rematch. This was going to be a real match of League played by 10 members from the community. It would be live streamed and shoutcasted by the official League commentator, Freak. Each team would have a pool of 10 champions that they could pick from. Once you get past the gut punch of nostalgia that these champion icons probably cause, you'll notice that the roster is strange. See, back in the day, there weren't that many champions in League. There weren't enough champions from either region to have a real full champion pool for the event. This led to Riot adding champions from other regions as freelance champions so that the players had more to pick from. The announcement poster included the players on each team, and all were highly involved in the League community in some way. Most of them being frequent posters on the long since removed League of Legends forums. Anyone in the community was able to apply to participate in this event, but there is a specific player who is most remembered for their participation in this match. This player is Guardsman Bob, who basically created AP Lane Warwick. Fun fact, he and Riot Jat were in a guild called Rebel Rising in Guild Wars. They won more gold capes from tournaments than any other guild and were both on the main roster for tournaments. In League, they even played together during the Season 1 qualifiers for Worlds while on Team Whale. Guardsman Bob was also known for having a stuffed penguin on stream all the time, named Pingu. Bob is often credited for the removal of an item from the game completely, specifically because of his insane performance during this match, which we'll be talking about soon. There was another twist in the announcement though. The winning team would choose one of 2 new items to be added to the game, either a new Doran's item or a new type of boots. No one knew at the time just how important this decision was and what an impact it would have on League overall. There was a lot of buzz on the forums about this match. One of my favorite things when I make these videos is reading old forum posts and seeing how much people's attitudes and thoughts around League has changed. There's nothing quite like going to the deepest, darkest corner of the internet. GameFAQs in 2010. This was a time when Amumu was considered by many to be a top tier pick, and was famously one of 5 champions that made up the Bronzodia team comp, which was the nightmare of low elo players during the early days of League. For a game that was still in its early days, the show match managed to generate a lot of talk on forums. It's hard to find viewership for the event when it was live, but based on most posts I can find, the stream had around 4,000 viewers. Riot has really come a long way. To really show you just how different Riot is now than they were then, this was the quality of the stream on everyone's favorite streaming site. own 3D.tv.
And we're simply waiting for Summoner Guardsman Bob to rejoin the game so that we may begin this battle on the field of justice, Summoner's Rift. Really all we're doing is waiting for him. He's holding up the show. There we go. Guardsman Bob is back into the game, and we are going to be ready to do awesome things. I can hear myself. It should be okay. All right.
Spoiler, it was not okay. The audio was missing for the champion select and loading screen. When the client launched, Freak's desktop and to-do list were there with a meme of Rammus. The stream may have been silent, but with champion artwork that looks this good, who could care? After watching some fumbling with the audio settings, it was eventually fixed and League's historic match could continue.
It's back, they say. Oh,
Outstanding.
It happened to randomly start working. All right, we are back. Hello, everyone.
It's baffling to think how a match with this production value would end up being so important to League overall. There were plenty of moments like this one where Freak just lost track of which players were playing the game.
The summoner known as Roku, who, if we can find him somewhere around here, he is... I actually don't see him anywhere.
Very shortly after this, Guardsman Bob went to gank mid lane, which was, in old League fashion, ADC versus ADC.
Is summoning Dr. Mundo for this match. Oh, Guardsman Bob coming in from the behind, getting slowed down, but this is going to be very dangerous. Udyr is doing a ton of damage. There's the enchanter, Crystal Leo. Frost will get that kill. First blood.
This was the start of a very big snowball for Guardsman Bob. Speaking of the matchups though, bot lane was Singed and Morgana against Soraka and Amumu. League was still so new at this point that it wasn't the case that players always took Flash. There was even a part where Freak discussed how Flash seemed to be popular. For reference, even the Morgana had picked Ghost over Flash. The snowball for Guardsman Bob would continue, and people watching the game live had some thoughts to share.
When we can see that, again, this is map awareness. They barely have vision of this camp down here, and there we go. There's a large team fight as Amumu has time built, but Roku will blast over the wall, has already topped his as well. Frost picking up that kill on Edwy, and here we go. This is Singe going to drop down. Singe is about to die. Will they kill Singe? And they're trying so hard, but he's still running around, not dying. And there's the Hemo Plague from Vladimir, trying to drop down as many as many Ionians as he can. Will he be able to kill Soraka? No, he's going to get silenced, and he will get dropped down. That mage unable to do anything while silenced. Soraka with a very clutch play. He's actually assisted or killed every single champion so far. Every single death that Noxus has suffered has been partially at the hands of Guardsman Bob.
Udyr was ahead of everyone by a lot. This lead only got bigger when Guardsman Bob bought Innervating Locket. Many people watching this video may have no idea what this item was, and for good reason. It was removed just a few days after this match was finished. So, what did it do? Well, to start with, it made Udyr... Innervating Locket had been reworked in the past, but this version of the item granted 430 health, and more importantly, a bunch of unique effects. It had an aura, which gave nearby allies 20 health regen per 5, and 9 mana regen per 5. It also gave 10% cooldown reduction. And finally, this unique passive. When you use an ability, you generate 50 health and 20 mana over 2 seconds. This effect has a 3-second cooldown. It's worth noting that the version that existed before this match also had that healing and mana regen applied to allies. Some champions like Udyr or Sona could spam their abilities non-stop to endlessly generate health and mana, which would be relevant to this match very soon. Udyr would end up with a 7-level lead, being level 18 while the enemy Scion was level 11. This led up to the ending sequence of the game where Guardsman Bob went in on a fight 1v4, and this is what happened.
Can Udyr catch up? No, it looks like they're going to be okay with these shields. Will they be able to drop down? No, the rest of the team's still looping around the sides, but Ashe coming through the jungle.
If you look at the fear, it's literally a 4v1 up, but now they've stopped and turn around.
Oh, this is very dangerous. There is Ken in the middle of everything, and they're still waiting for Amumu and Soraka to gain in. And yes, they have dropped down Morgana, and this is very, very dangerous. The Ionians are in very good shape right now. This Vladimir is alone, and Edwy has dropped down. That is 3 dead Noxians. Ionia is still 5 strong. They're trying to jump down onto Singe. Can they do this? He's leaving a poison trail behind him. That will hurt the rest of these Ionian champions, but no, they are still diving down into this base. Will Singe drop down? They have exhausted Ashe, and yes, there it is, a legendary Guardsman Bob, a legendary Udyr.
The final 5 minutes of the game, from the start of the fight in top lane to when the game ended, was a single 5-minute battle with Udyr. Even though his team had to reset multiple times, Guardsman Bob didn't. And this completely puts on display how ridiculous an item like Innervating Locket could be on a champion that could spam its abilities for insane sustain. It was so strong that while in the enemy base, Udyr could go from this health to this health in the matter of seconds. The game ended with Guardsman Bob standing outside the enemy fountain with such a lead that they couldn't even push him out 5v1. To be fair, the game was long since decided at this point. There was no way Noxus could win, but it does show how far ahead Guardsman Bob was on Udyr, and it put a spotlight on the strength of Innervating Locket. That's why Innervating Locket would be removed from the game within the next week. Riot Morello has since gone on record saying that they had been planning to remove the item from the game anyway, due to it being too hard to balance on any champion that could spam its abilities. Sona had just released a few months ago, and Cassiopeia was about to release too, so it could be the case, but I'll let you decide. There were also plans to have it re-added to the game in Season 2, according to Freak, but that didn't work out either. It did later make an appearance in the Nexus Blitz and Arena game modes though. Moving on to the impacts of this match, we can start with Arcane, which has been a huge success for Riot and has won many awards. For a lot of players in recent years though, it's also the beginning of a funnel that ends with starting to play League of Legends. So in some ways, Arcane is also one of the worst things that could have ever happened. I'm kidding. Sort of. With Noxus being one of the upcoming storylines, it's very likely that this humble match, played by League fans 15 years ago, will be a part of the overall storyline. Of course, it's also possible that Riot retcons this match completely, because let's face it, nothing is safe when it comes to Riot. Summoners even existing was a big part of what old League lore was built on, and that's not part of it anymore either, unless you include things they've been too lazy to change, like voice lines.
Do I scare you, Summoner?
But the Noxus vs Ionia part of the lore is critical to the origin of so many champions. It's going to be really difficult to not at least include it in some way. It's so crucial to Ionia in general that I can't imagine they could just skip it. At the very least, it will be a huge missed opportunity by Riot if they don't at least reference it. Riot does have a long history of referencing the coolest moments from pro play in their cinematics, and there's so many ways they could include this match, especially parts like Udyr fighting 1v5, or just referencing Innervating Locket like they did with many items in Arcane. There's still a very important part of the show match we need to talk about, and it might be the most important part. And no, I'm not talking about when one of the rioters started talking about how their in-universe League of Legends self-insert was indeed dating Nidalee.
Well, first off, anyone who's followed the Journal of Justice, I will say this. I do have a bit of a relationship with Nidalee. I will say she is quite the cougar.
Look, I told you it was a weird stream, and believe it or not, the really old League lore was even stranger than that. Way, way stranger. Speaking of, if you'd like a video covering all the bizarre and forgotten parts of League's old lore, let me know in the comments below. In the aftermath of the match, Riot consulted with the winning team. They were able to choose one item to add to the game, either a new Doran's item or a new pair of boots. And this decision might have been one of the most important decisions in League's history.
In a 4-1 vote here, the victorious Ionian summoners have chosen to institute a new boot item.
This item is the Ionian Boots of Lucidity, and to this day, the tagline on the item references this match. These boots are definitely one of the most built items in League's history across both solo queue and pro play. Champions from every role can build them because cooldown reduction, or ability haste, is just so important. As a matter of fact, they've actually been built in the final series of every Worlds tournament, with the exception of Season 3. This does also mean that Faker has actually been present for more of SKT's Worlds wins than Lucidity Boots, one of the most built items of all time. You knew I was going to put a Faker stat in here somewhere. These boots are a staple of the game, and they've been there, quietly in the background, for so many of League's most iconic moments. At Worlds 2022, for example, in the second last match of the tournament, Lucidity Boots were built on literally half of the champions in that match. If these boots didn't exist, how different would League have been? They've appeared in so many games since Season 1. How many champions were made stronger, maybe even meta, due to the ability to get that extra cooldown reduction early in the game? How many professional matches would have played out differently if champions had 15% less CDR, or had to itemize differently to get it? The choice to add these boots to the game could very well be a butterfly effect that caused a long chain of events, changing the outcome of countless teamfights and of who knows how many matches. And all of this because of one seemingly inconsequential game of League, commentated awkwardly and streamed by a small indie company just trying to get their players interested in their game. I know what you're thinking. Maybe Riot would have later added cooldown boots to the game anyway, just with a different name. And that could be the case, but the evidence says otherwise. Guardsman Bob confirmed the details of the other item they could have chosen in a post on the Team Liquid forum. When I make these videos, I really do subject myself to parts of the internet that no person should ever have to go. The other item that players could have picked was a Doran's item which gave 100 health, 100 mana, and 8% spell vamp. That item was never added to the game. It is possible Riot would have eventually added cooldown boosts to the game anyway, because of how important the stat is. But based on the fact that the Doran's item was never added, it's also possible that the boots would never have been added either. And if that was the case, then who knows how that would impact the popularity of certain champions or builds, and then how that would change the meta throughout the years. The player reception to the show match was actually very mixed. Guardsman Bob's carry of the game was so strong that many players criticized the match for simply being boring, because the Noxus team could do nothing to stop him. Even in 2010, players were complaining about the tank meta. Yes, really. While players thought the idea was really interesting, many players felt that the commentary was annoying to listen to, especially the parts related to the lore, because players just wanted to focus on the match. There was a lot of criticism about it, and if you go back to watch the match now, it is a bit of a hard watch. Even outside of the lore commentary, Riot was still trying to get their foot in. Toward the end of the game, the stream was interrupted by Freak getting an Outlook reminder for the Cassiopeia voiceover, because she was releasing soon.
Ionian's just laying siege, go away. Ionian's laying siege with Outlook yelling at me.
The match is a time capsule of how far League and Riot have come, and I wish that Riot had kept up with these sorts of community events. There's no doubt that this stream was filled with passion and genuine care for the game and its lore. It's something that I think that many new players may have never heard of, and a part of League history that I think is not brought up enough. For those who are curious about what happened to Guardsman Bob, well, he originally wanted to work for Riot, but he never had the opportunity. Eventually, he stopped streaming League entirely and moved to Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone. To this day, he still streams, but much less than he used to, and to a smaller viewer base. He's live for a few hours at a time, and his Twitch page shows that he's currently working on GeoGuessr game creation. While Guardsman Bob moved on from League long ago, his legacy on Summoner's Rift lives on to this day, and his performance in a match played 15 years ago is part of what could be a butterfly effect that changed League of Legends permanently. If I ever see Guardsman Bob live, I'll check in and see if Pingu's still there too. I'm curious, what do you think of this show match? Do you think that Riot should have continued with events like this? And were you playing back when this match actually happened? Let me know down in the comments. Before finishing up, I wanted to take a moment to thank you all for supporting the channel. Every like or comment really does go a long way, and as always, thank you for watching.
She is quite the cougar.
Alright, dude. What the flip?